We are joined with Sabrina Van Tassel, the filmmaker for Missing from Fire Trail Road is the name of the film that will be closing the Sidewalk Film Festival on Sunday, August 25th at 6 p.m. at the Alabama Theater. Sabrina, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us today. I want to say congratulations, obviously, for...
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, for the recognition that State of Texas versus Melissa has received in the last couple of years, but more importantly, to congratulate you on the awareness that you brought with that film to Melissa's story. And I saw that she may be on the verge of being freed and her case being dropped in the last couple of months. I know that it was her execution was stayed. Can you tell me, have you had an update with Melissa? Have you been in contact?
I'm in contact weekly with Melissa. I'm always in contact with her. So what happened is that 2 years ago, her execution was stayed, and it went back to Cameron County, which was the court, the original court where she was trialed. And basically, the new DA and the new judge signed an order dismissing, everything and all charges, and basically saying that they're not going to prosecute her again because they lack evidence. They don't think that they could actually trial that case. So It's going back to the Court of Criminal Appeals, and it's up to them. But since they were the one who stayed the execution in the first place, we have very high hopes that she is going to be freed in a very, very near future. So, time is very, very long right now for her and for me. We are talking, like I said, weekly, and she has big plans about, what she'd like to do once she's freed. So this is basically the conversations that we're having right now, is that, she is actually looking for, a halfway house when she leaves, exits death row and is liberated. And so this is really what's on our mind, I don't see how she could stay any longer on death row. Her case being so non-existent, really, at this point. So my hopes are very high that she's going to be freed.
Well, I preface that before we talk about Missing from Fire Trail Road, because I was watching a news story just this morning where they showed a shot of the courtroom, and there were folks in her supporting her that says, "See the film, watch the film," and I feel that
watch the film.
Your film brought this case probably to light, that probably had a big impact on reopening, re-examining the case. So that's what I would really, that's probably to me the most success of that story that you told.
It's a complete success that I could never have, wished for in my dreams, right? I mean, it was just the fact that the film brought her case back to light, that it basically saved her life is for a filmmaker the greatest accomplishment that you could, especially for like a documentary filmmaker, that you could ever accomplish, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And what we did at this point, when she had an execution date and she, her days were counted and she was going to be executed within 90 days, we did an impact campaign, touring Texas. And what we had the film. And all we were asking people to do was watch the film. Watch the film. And if you have, any doubts on your mind, then sign the petition and, help her, help her stop the execution. I mean, save her life. And so this is really what we did. And by touring Texas, we helped making the story, a Texas story, like with all the Texas media. And then the story became national, and then it became international. So this is really what we wanted. I feel that today, more than ever, when people don't get the justice that they deserve, the media and storytellers like myself, are here to, bring these stories to light. And so for me, Melissa was someone who could be executed. She had no voice. She had, her family, didn't know what to do. They had very little means. And, it was up to the media to basically save her. I know, and she knows for a fact that, had this film not been made, she would probably have been executed like a long time ago. So this is really what what it comes up to. And it's the same thing for my new film, right? For Missing from Fire Trail Road. I mean, we are talking about someone whose life doesn't really matter. We're talking about Mary Ellen Johnson Davis, who's a Native American who disappeared from her tribe. She's been missing for almost 3 years now. And who's looking for her? Nobody. And she would probably be someone that you would have never heard of, if I hadn't made a film about her. So I feel that, this is really what I do, in my work, is kind of giving a voice to the voiceless, to those who don't count, in the eyes of society. And I guess there's a part of me that wonders why that is.
In the eyes of society, yes, but also in the eyes of the United States government. I mean, these are two stories of women that, in the case of Texas versus Melissa, they were actively trying to harm her. And then in the case of Missing from Fire Trail Road with Mary Ellen Johnson Davis, where, as you said, they just don't count. They're non-existent. And can you give me just a brief explanation of the journey of how you went from the state of Texas versus Melissa to deciding to tell the story of Mary Ellen Johnson Davis and the broader story of this generational trauma that you explore in the film?
And that I explore in both films.
Correct.
Because transgenerational trauma is something that is so important, and that people don't realize that you don't actually end up on death row by accident. There's Melissa, for example, if we're talking about Melissa, she was a very flawed character. She was someone who had been abused when she was a child. She probably came from a family of abused women, and she had way too many children. And so, of course, is going to be targeted. She's not the, someone who is like a flawed character, who has had a lot of trauma in her life. Usually that's where the transgenerational trauma comes in the picture. And so the link between the two films is really there in my work in general. For Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, about 10 years ago, I directed a short documentary about, missing and murdered, Indigenous women that were, going missing throughout the US and in Canada. And I was really shocked that there was a part of the population in the US that actually could disappear and be murdered, and, nobody would be looking for them. And that was something that always stuck in my mind, that I would one day go back and direct a feature about that problem. I had 10 years ago, I went to the Tulalip tribes, in Washington State, and I had met with Deborah Parker, who was the vice chairwoman of the tribe and an activist, and we stayed in touch. And when the state of Texas versus Melissa phenomenon happened, basically, after we did the campaign and after Melissa was stayed, I was all of a sudden thinking, what is the film that I want to do right now? I mean, what would make the most sense after, after my this incredible journey with Melissa Lucio? I mean, what story do I want to tell? And right away I knew, I mean, it was this story. I was just like, and so I called Deborah Parker, that activist that I had met 10 years, prior, and I asked her, I said, is this still going on? The same way that it was happening 10 years ago. And she said, Sabrina, nothing's changed. It's exactly the same. Women are going missing. Women are murdered. Women are raped. And we're still having the same exact problems. And, it's still up to the FBI, because the tribal police are not allowed to basically, investigate, cases involving non-natives on Indian land. And so I was like, right away, I said to her, I said, I'd like to do the film with you. I'd like you to be executive producer of the film. And this is really how it started. And then I had heard that Mary Ellen Johnson Davis had gone missing from the Tulalip tribes. And so I asked her to become executive producer, and then Mary Ellen Johnson Davis disappeared,
Right.
and so I was looking for a story to tell. I knew I wanted to tell. I knew I wanted to do a film about missing and murdered Indigenous women. I knew that I wanted to do it with Deborah Parker, but I mean, I didn't know what story to tell, really. Why, how do I pick one specific woman who disappears? Why is her story better than someone else, right? It's hard to tell. And then Mary Ellen, I found out that Mary Ellen, Johnson had disappeared from that huge road in the middle of the tribe, Fire Trail Road, in plain daylight, in the morning. I mean, there's like so many cars, going back and forth on that. It's almost a highway.
Right.
And I was like, how is this possible that she just vanished and nobody has a clue what happened to her? And so I started kind of daydreaming, like imagining where she came from, what was her story, who were her family, and I basically kind of really started the filming without knowing anything about her, just knowing that I wanted to know who she was. And so really what you see in the film, the investigation that you see, is really the way that it happened, while I was filming it, which was not knowing much about her, meeting her family, meeting her sisters, trying to find out, who she was, hearing people thinking that, it might have been her husband, that, she had a hard life. And basically, really, everything that you see in the film is something that I discovered while I was filming it. But I'm convinced that, it could have been somebody else. I would have found the same traumas. What happened to Mary Ellen in terms of her generational trauma, what happened to her, while she was a child, the abuse that she had, her drug addiction, and also what happened in the boarding schools, and it affected the tribe, is something that you would find in every single woman who disappears, on reservations.
Yeah, and you mentioned her sisters, Nona and Jerry, and her cousin Lynette. Those were the most intriguing to me because they were the ones that took it into their own hands to do the investigation because the system had failed them utterly. And I have two older sisters. I can't imagine the trauma, to having to know that your sister's missing and no one is helping you. And as I think you've said this in maybe other interviews and maybe in the film, if she were blonde, if she were a different nationality, it'd be a national story. And we see that here in the American South as well. If it's an African American young woman that goes missing, it doesn't get nearly the attention that other folks might. And that really struck me, that the determination that her sisters and her cousin had for the love of their sister to find out what was going on was really touching. So I was happy, and it was a beautiful thing to see in your film that you followed that thread. Was that something that
Yes.
naturally happened, as you said? But can you tell me a little bit about how you got to know the sisters and what that relationship was as you built it?
I on my very first day of filming, I met an activist who was helping them. Her name was Roxanne White. She's in the film. And I said to her, I'm looking for the sister. I mean, does she have any family? And she said, yes, she has 3 sisters. And I said, I'd like to meet them. And literally the next morning, I was in their living room. And, that scene at the very beginning of the scene when I am basically filming them in their house, in their living room, was
Mhm.
that day. And
wow.
I said, what do you know about the disappearance of your sister? And they're like, we don't know anything.
Right.
Nobody's called us. Nobody's told us anything. We don't know anything. And I'm like so touched right now, even telling you this, right? I was like, how is this possible? I
Right.
mean, it's insane. It was like as if, they were missing a dog, right? An animal, really.
Right.
All they had were like, these, reward, billboards put up, but that you would put for like a missing animal, really.
Yeah.
And they were really like also kept in the dark. Like, I think there's only one FBI agent who called them ever. And that was way back. They didn't know where to turn. They didn't know what to do. So they really started, like putting, like going on Facebook and looking for her and kind of like doing the investigation themselves.
Right. Right.
And so it was just really like traumatizing. And then like a couple of weeks later, they did that event, for the 2-year disappearance of Mary Ellen, with, the chairwoman of the tribe and the lawyer who was helping them, who basically told me, I don't know anything either. We don't know anything at all. We're just completely in the dark. And right there, I was like, this is such a problem, right? On one hand, this is America, right? Where you can basically, interrogate someone for like a zillion hours, until, that person admits to a crime.
Right.
But in Mary Ellen Johnson Davis' story, there's never been any arrests. Nobody was ever interrogated, So if you talk about double standards, let's talk about it. I mean, we have a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a 2-tiered justice system? It's on display in this film, clearly.
It is.
I noticed that you come from a journalistic background as well. How do you? Because the film is very lyrical, and State of Texas versus Melissa, I noticed that as well. But the geography of the Tulalip tribe and that area just is it. You can't help but feel the mysticism, I would say, or just the beauty of and the history of that area. And you captured it beautifully. It's almost a lyricism to the shots. How do you balance that out? Do you work with your director of photography? Is that something that you're conscious of, or is that something again that just kind of evolves as the story is being told?
No, that's the only part where I think that I was really thinking about. We did discuss, the way that we wanted, the film to be shot. I like to film my documentaries as if I would film narratives, because for me it's the same thing, really. There's so many scenes in Missing from Fire Trail Road that if I wanted to do direct a fiction and a narrative, I would just like film exactly the same way. And so just being in an Indian reservation, they are very mystical. They are, they believe in the universe. They believe, in the power of trees, of rivers, of the sea, of their ancestors. And so really, I mean, it felt that way, with this just immense, those woods were so incredibly, I mean, it was just like a huge coat, right? That,
Yeah.
where basically Mary Ellen had disappeared. That's what it felt
Right.
like. And so I said to my DP, I really want to feel that, it's, I really want to feel that, that basically everybody's watching us. Everybody knows what happened to Mary. The woods know what happened to Mary. And so this is really how we worked for, on this film. That was very important as well.
Yeah.
So the image was very important, and so was the music.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about the music. Please.
Music is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, music is everything for the tribe. Music is everything to Native Americans, their powwows and everything. I mean, it's so important. So I really wanted, I worked with the same exact composer that I worked for the State of Texas versus Melissa, but I asked him to co-compose with the West Shore Canoe family and this, Native American composer from Tulalip and Lummi Nation, and basically mixing their two universe together.
Right.
And that really was something that created something, really, really great. Like the spirits was, with us basically.
Right.
So that was very important. But like you're asking of how I mix my, the investigative part, right? And my journalist side to the story is always very important, because like from my journalistic background, like I deal with facts, and I deal with everything that you see in the film. There's not going to be one person telling me that's not true. When I went and interviewed the FBI agent, I spent a lot of time with that agent, and I repeated the questions very, like a lot of times as well. I said, "Are you sure this is your answer? Are you sure that, Native women are not disappearing at a higher rate than any other women in the US? Because, and he kept saying, no, it's not true." And so I feel that there's, the part, the investigating part is very important, because, this is not something that, I made up.
That was an interesting scene to me, in that he clearly was not prepared to answer those questions. And, not to.
He was very prepared.
Oh, okay.
He was very prepared to answer these questions. You don't, an interview with the FBI agent is always prepared.
Yeah,
They
maybe
received
in
the
terms of
questions prior. There were five other FBI agents in the room.
oh wow, okay.
The green lighted every single question I was going to ask. So he was very prepared.
Yeah, maybe I should think of it another way in that the answers didn't really seem to give a lot of information. He was So that was interesting. That was an interesting
Yeah, it's like they're
interview to
giving
me.
you. It's like Yeah, it's like he's giving you an interview, but he doesn't want to tell you anything, right?
Yes,
But at the
that was
same
yeah.
time, he
That's
tells you that everything's okay.
right.
Yeah, exactly. But at
That's
the same
that's
time, he
that's
tells
it.
you that everything is okay and that, um, basically, there's not such, it's not such a big problem, right? He basically wanted to say that, like Native women are not going missing at a higher rate than any other women in the US, that no, it's not true, that they are not targeted. And there's a side to, he basically wants, they want to keep it kind of like under control. They want to keep something under control, which has gone, off control a very long time ago. And they don't have enough agents. The FBI doesn't have, enough agents to basically investigate all those crimes, and
Right.
it's a huge problem. And they don't really. Also, that's also the way that they see it. They see there's a side of them that basically say, well, they put themselves out there. They lead a lifestyle that is risky. A lot of these women, have addictions or are runaways, or lead a lifestyle where they can disappear. Uh, and my answer to that is, you go look for these women no matter what, right? I mean,
Right.
if it was a white woman, Mary Ellen would have been found a long time ago. So it's very problematic. And that interview you know for the tribe, for example, the Chulelep tribes, they watched the film and they were just horrified by the
I'm
answers
sure.
from the FBI.
I'm sure. Um, just to wrap up, again thank you for your
Yeah.
time. What really I watched this. I watched the film twice, but I watched the ending at least 4 or 5 times. There's a crescendo at the end with the music. We talked about the music. That is very cinematic, and there's a voiceover in the Lushootseed language. Um, Strangers stole our land, tried to eradicate us, cut our tongues, burned our long houses to the ground, but we survived. We are still here, and we are thriving. Um, and then there was a shot of it looked like a party, or there was joy, and that the release of this joy, where they're still here and they're still telling their story and they're not giving up, was one of the greatest cathartic moments of the important story that you told. Can you talk about that particular sequence and how you approach that to end the film?
Yes. So the ceremony that you see at the end of the film is called the Salmon Ceremony, and it's the most important ceremony in Chulelep. And it's a ceremony that had been forgotten for over 100 years. Well, not forgotten, forced to be forgotten, because they burned, their longhouses, and eradicated their culture, and like like what with what you saw in the film, uh, they forced them to forget about their language and learn English. So it was in the 80s that all of a sudden the father of the chairwoman of Terry Gobin went to see the elders and started recording the language again, and the elders taught them in the late 80s how to do the Salmon ceremony again. And so basically Lashutsi that you hear at the very end that is being taught to the kids right now,
It's a
all
beautiful
that,
scene.
you know, was gone from 1880 to like 1980. That was just completely gone. So they are basically learning their languages again, learning their songs again, learning their traditions again, and who they are, and the fact that they're teaching Lashutsi, you know, to the new generation is very important. You know, it's how they are still here. And those words that you said is, you know, I wrote those words. This is a song that I wrote because, you know, I saw how they're embracing their culture back. It's so important for them. And for me, this is really the answer to everything, is by knowing who they are and getting their culture back is going to really is the only way for them to heal. And also I feel they need a recognition from what happened. You know, I mean, they a genocide happened. Let's just talk about what, I don't like using this word, just like, you know,
Yeah, but that's
but this really, really what
it's one way to
happened. I mean,
describe it.
they tried
Yeah,
to eradicate the culture altogether, and they're getting it back. And they're incredibly resilient, and and you should see the pride that they have, you know, wearing their regalias again, and, you know, singing their songs again. And so when you have Terry Gobin, the chairwoman of the Tulalip tribe, leading her people, her tribe, you know, to the Salmon ceremony, and doing this ceremony that their ancestors did for, you know, time immemorial, since time immemorial, really, it's just really incredible. You know, it's you need you know where you're going if you know where you come from. And, you know, this is really how they're going to thrive